From West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
At the Legislature today, EMTs provide life-saving services, but the House Judiciary Committee is considering a bill that would make certain EMTs are up to the task. We'll talk with Community and Technical College Chancellor Jim Skidmore. And the Senate enters the digital age. We'll check in with several members to see how they're getting along with their new iPads on the Legislature today. And good evening, I'm Beth Voorhees. It's been called the last unfunded liability of state government. We've heard it discussed for a few years now. OPEB, other post-employment benefits. It's regarding health care for public employment retirees. Today, with action by the Senate, a bill to fix the issue is headed to Governor Tomlin. The Senate today was asked to concur with the changes the House made to Senate Bill 469. Majority Leader Senator John Unger explained those changes.
They amended the section of the bill that encourages the Director of PEIA to evaluate and administer programs to improve quality and the health status of members, to develop innovative payment methodologies to manage health care delivery costs, to evaluate effective benefit designs, to evaluate cost-sharing and benefit-based programs, and to adopt effective industry programs that manage the long-term effectiveness and cost for the programs. Urge the adoption.
The amendments were adopted by voice vote, and the bill was passed 32-0 with 2 members absent. Senate Bill 469 becomes the third bill passed by the legislature at this session. The Senate today also took time to hear from one of their Fraser Singleton interns. Each year, college students apply for the chance to follow members of the legislature around for 1 week and meet with the governor and members of the Supreme Court. Alex Collins spoke on behalf of this year's interns.
As a political science major at Concord University, I have studied the legislature in class, but have never had the opportunity to see the workings of the legislature in practice, especially from such a close level. This week, the other Fraser Singleton interns and I have attended committee meetings, worked one-on-one with our senators, witnessed party caucuses, and gained a whole new understanding of how our government works. Before this internship, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my life. Now I know that politics will be in my future, be it running for public office, working in the Capitol, or some other form of public service.
The Senate today also adopted Senate Resolution Number 12, sponsored by all the members. The resolution encourages West Virginia corporations to endorse the Marcellus Principles. Lead sponsor, Senator Orphy Klempa, explains.
The resolution itself simply just encourages the industries that are coming to West Virginia and that are currently in West Virginia drilling in a Marcellus shale to do a couple, three things. One, first, to respect our land and our environment, and second, to ensure the safety and security of our communities in which they're doing the operations. Last but not least, Mr. President, it encourages them to hire our families, our friends, and our neighbors, and yes, Mr. President, to hire West Virginians to work here in West Virginia on the projects and the wells where the work is being done. This game changer, as some of my colleagues have called it, will only change the game for some if those of us who are elected by all West Virginians don't use our voices to change the game for all of us.
After taking Monday mornings off since the beginning of the session and convening at 1 o'clock Monday afternoons, the Senate will meet at its normal time, 11 o'clock this Monday, to a full roster of bills that need to be addressed. The House Judiciary Committee is working on a bill that would suspend emergency medical workers' licenses without a hearing if there's probable cause. As Adam Cavalier reports, House Bill 4028 was held over after an hour of discussion this morning.
The bill's lead sponsor is Fayette County Democrat Margaret Staggers. Staggers is the medical director for about 10 EMS squads in the southern part of the state. She says the bill is meant to help weed out some bad apples.
The medical director is supposed to set standards and make sure that protocols are followed and that we live up to the high level of integrity that you would expect from someone when you call 911 and allow them into your home. So if it's a protocol breach, I have no problem with taking a paramedic or an EMT and retraining them, refocusing them, and they're an extremely valuable resource in our state. We don't pay them enough, so it's hard to keep them. But there are, as I told the committee, Jesus chose 12 apostles, and of those 12 apostles, one of them was no good. And I think Jesus gave that to us so that we would know that it's okay that 1 out of 12 just ain't any good. And so I didn't mean to. And so this would be a group of your peers, the people who are running with you, who have tried to save this person and may have even used me, because I am presented to these people as the boogeyman, that when they get to talk to me that they are in big trouble. So now they've come to talk to me, and it's my impression with these people that they can't be saved because of attitude usually. I think every saint has a past and every sinner has a future, so I don't have any problems with people doing silly things, and I've done enough of them myself. I'm sure you all have examples. But the point is, it has to be someone who understands that this is a sacred trust, that they're running under my medical license, and the only time I would ever call the state, and that's only been about twice in 25 years, is when I think that you all in this room, as the public, needs protected right now.
The West Virginia EMS Coalition's Chris Hall says his organization is appreciative of the bill's potential ability to keep a suspended worker from squad hopping.
We are fully supportive of trying to address that situation and find a way, because our squads, if they suspend a worker because they think that they're acting inappropriately, certainly don't want them to go and get in the back of an ambulance somewhere else. So to the degree that we can address that problem through this legislation or clarify that ability through this legislation, then we'd be fully supportive of that.
The Judiciary Committee considered several amendments and differences between the version Staggers introduced and a committee substitute.
What the committee substitute does is it provides some procedural due process when this occurs. There's 2 sections that are brought in, and it's not really particularly substantive, except for the fact that it requires the hearing to be immediately scheduled, and suspension shall be temporary in nature, and allow the individual or organization to have a hearing immediately on their license or certification suspension.
Those suspensions would deal with things like drug or alcohol abuse. Disciplinary action for on-the-job errors, such as taking a patient to the wrong hospital, would not fall under the bill's reach. Staggers indicated that training was the appropriate reaction in those instances. Staggers says it seemed as if the Judiciary Committee was overthinking things.
It's real easy to make things more complicated. This is a real simple concept, and they made it extremely complicated. I hope it's been tabled, they'll bring it back, and we'll have a very simple way to protect the citizens of West Virginia.
The bill will remain on the Judiciary Committee's agenda next week. For West Virginia Public Broadcasting, I'm Adam Cavalier in Charleston.
There's a lot of discussion at this session about getting public education and higher education to work together. We'll find out a little more about that in just a moment. First, here's a look at some of the bills introduced in the Senate today. Among the bills introduced in the Senate today, Senate Bill 560, relating to the practice of psychology. To be eligible for a license to practice psychology, the applicant must obtain a doctoral degree or its equivalent. Senate Bill 561, to prohibit fractional pricing in the retail sale of gasoline and to define such pricing as an unfair or deceptive practice. Senate Bill 568, to create a college and career readiness initiative in which the State Board of Education, the Higher Education Policy Commission, and the Council for Community and Technical College Education collaborate to formally adopt uniform college and career readiness standards for English language arts and math. Up for passage in the Senate on Monday, Senate Bill 404, to permit the issuance of a barrister's certificate to teach in West Virginia public schools on a volunteer basis only. Senate Bill 409, to substitute community service instead of jail time for persons who are under the age of 21 and who purchase, consumes, sells, serves, or possesses alcohol, or who lies about his or her age to purchase alcohol. Senate Bill 418, to require that any person appointed to the parole board on or after July 1, 2012 shall have at least a baccalaureate degree and at least 5 years of actual experience in the fields of corrections, law enforcement, sociology, law, education, psychology, social work, or medicine. And Senate Bill 484, at the request of the state Supreme Court, to promote the safety, well-being, and timely permanency of children in child abuse and neglect, family court, or juvenile cases. Among the bills on second reading in the Senate on Monday, Senate Bill 166, making disarming or attempting to disarm a correctional officer a felony. Senate Bill 186, providing salary equity supplement payments to teachers and service personnel. Senate Bill 208, repealing the telecommunications tax. Senate Bill 411, to make it unlawful to willfully and knowingly sell, purchase, install, transfer, or possess in this state any automated sales suppression device or zapper or phantomware on electronic cash registers. Such devices modify sales purchases with the intent of tax fraud. And House Bill 4291, to authorize the Supreme Court of Appeals to determine which county law libraries are being used and should be continued as an obligation of the state. West Virginia's community and technical college system is trying to fill what its chancellor calls middle-skilled jobs. Here's a review of Chancellor Jim Skidmore's remarks to the House Education Committee in January. Adam Cavalier reports.
CTCS Chancellor Jim Skidmore defines a middle-skilled job as a dental hygienist, for example. It's a position that requires a high school diploma, but not a 4-year college education. Skidmore says there's an issue in filling that void because 60% of CTCS students need some level of developmental education.
It's a bigger challenge to get those students through to that degree because you have to remediate them and then get them on a track because we don't want to put them into a college level course in math or English in which they will not be successful because we know they're not going to graduate if that's the case.
The number of associate degrees the organization granted is up 34%, while one-year certificates have ballooned by 190%. Skidmore says the mission of the CTCS is just like that of any other educational institution.
We want to produce more graduates. That's priority number one, obviously. We have said that. And promote strong employer partnerships, economic development, workforce, serve more adults, and we need to build and maintain our facilities.
Skidmore says a definite area that needs improvement is assisting students with transfers to 4-year degree-granting institutions.
If we ever had any additional money, and I've mentioned LOCIA a couple of times, I would love to see a +2 promise scholarship type for transfer students. It would increase the number of students going on to baccalaureate institution to get a baccalaureate degree, and it would really benefit those students if they have gone to community college. I don't know what grade point average, we put a 3.5 or 3.2 or whatever on it. It would really help them out in taking that next step, and we want to increase the educational level in our state.
Skidmore says the typical community college student is not a promised scholar. Just a fraction over 1% of community college students receive the scholarship. But Skidmore says that doesn't make finding those students some level of funding any less important.
We would like to increase the financial aid participation rate of all of our students. It's 43%. That's about what it is nationally, but we want to do better than that. We want to get more of our students eligible for financial aid because we know from surveys that one of the major factors that cause students to drop out of college is financial. So if we can get them financial aid, that might help them to persist and graduate.
Skidmore highlighted increased enrollment in the 10-school system, but cautioned lawmakers that West Virginia isn't graduating enough high school students to fill the workforce's needs. Skidmore says that makes career advancement an important CTCS initiative.
Our challenge is to work with those adults that most of which are already working. It may be at McDonald's, it may be at Subway, it may be a convenience store, or they may already be in a high-wage, high-demand job. But there are a lot of those individuals that are working in minimum wage or close that need to get into training programs for middle-skilled jobs so they can move into higher-wage jobs.
CTCS enrollment is up 27%. However, that figure has leveled off after a few years of exponential growth, which Skidmore attributed to the recession. For West Virginia Public Broadcasting, I'm Adam Cavalier in Charleston.
And CTCS Chancellor Jim Skidmore joins us now. Hello, welcome back.
Oh, good evening. Thank you, Beth.
That was quite a wish list to the House Finance Committee. Anything to add to that, or has anything happened since you presented that in January?
Well, you know, we've presented our budget request to both the chambers, the Senate and the House, and outlined some of the things that we want, you know, budgetarily and the reason we want them. And also we gave them some information about our successes and like enrollment and graduation numbers and that type of data that we want to prove that we're doing a good job. But budgetarily, we'd like to have some money to reward our colleges on a performance-based funding model for producing graduates, and we've asked for $5 million to do that. Obviously, we always need money in workforce development. The governor's put in his budget $2 million for workforce development for the community colleges that will put to good use on some of those things I talked about in that presentation on middle skill jobs and those high-level technical jobs.
You mentioned the worker who is working at a fast food restaurant or a convenience store. What can those businesses do to encourage their workers to go back to school, to get a little more training or a degree?
Well, I think if those individuals, most of them are working because they may already be going to school and they're working part-time, so they may already be in our system. But those that aren't, you know, there are good opportunities in some of those jobs, technical jobs, that they can become a chemical operator or that type of occupation where they can make $60,000 or $70,000, $80,000 a year. And if those employers would encourage those individuals, you know, to proceed into higher level skills, they may lose them as a fast food worker.
They would.
But if those students are working there, they've already developed workplace skills. Hopefully they come to work on time and they understand what it's like to work, you know, in for an employer. And that's a big step along the way.
Last time you were here, we talked about Marcellus shale gas drilling and training the workers, and it was going on. Is it still? Is it growing?
Yes, it is. We have primarily two community colleges that deal with Marcellus shale. Pierpont Community and Technical College in Fairmont and West Virginia Northern Community College. It's in Weirton and Wheeling and New Martinsville. Because almost all the Marcellus shale activity is in north central West Virginia and northern Panhandle. So they continue to train and educate those individuals that are becoming rig workers and working on the drilling rigs. We have also worked with the oil and gas companies looking ahead of when they start building their compression stations and moving the natural gas out and the type of workforce they'll need for that. And they're going to need some highly skilled individuals, and you know they need electromechanical and instrumentation skills, you know, to keep those compression stations running. So we've talked to companies about, you know, what they'll need in those areas, and we've already implemented some programs that'll be moving in that direction so that we can get a pipeline of those workers continue to go on.
It sounds like we really have to work on workforce development, and very quickly. We've got to train these people because they're going to be needed very, very soon.
Well, you know, as drilling increases, they're going to need more workers, and so you know, and they want some workers with some really basic technical skills, you know, electromechanical type skills, where they can go on and then they can increase their skills as they start working on the rig. But they also want those individuals, you know, on down the road when they do the compression stations. We need to get some people in the pipeline that when those come about, then they can move into those high skilled jobs.
Do we have enough of them going to these colleges and learning these skills?
Well, currently we don't.
Okay.
You know, if the demand really increases, and then when, not if, but when we get a cracker plant, that number of employees or the demand will really go up. And again, that'll be those highly skilled chemical operators. It'll be those what we call mechatronics graduates, which is electromechanical instrumentation. We don't have enough of those people in the pipeline right now, but we'll have to work very hard to get them into our programs.
Chancellor Jim Skidmore, thanks so much for coming by again. Appreciate it.
Hey,
Thank
my
you.
pleasure. Thank you, Beth.
Coming up, the Senate has entered the computer age this session. That story after a look at some of the bills introduced in the House today. Among the bills introduced in the House today, House Bill 4483 to require the Attorney General to develop an educational diversion program for minors accused of sexting. It provides criteria for admittance into a program by a prosecuting attorney and creates the opportunity for minors to avoid prosecution upon the completion of the educational diversion program. House Bill 4484 to increase the number of Child Protective Service workers by 20% and to reduce the caseloads of those workers. House Bill 4493 to make March 30th a special Memorial Day to be known as Vietnam Veterans Recognition Day. And House Bill 4498 to create the Compassionate Use Act for medical cannabis. It provides protections for the medical use of marijuana for debilitating medical conditions. Among the bills up for passage in the House on Monday, House Bill 4012 to remove the Commissioner of the Bureau for Public Health from certain boards. The bill further provides for the composition and salaries for the West Virginia Board of Chiropractic and the West Virginia Board of Hearing Aid Dealers. Senate Bill 4101 to authorize teacher education programs in the state to enter into agreements with county boards to use intensively supervised and mentored teacher-in-residence programs approved by the state board in lieu of student teaching. And House Bill 4122 to allow an entity affiliated with an institution of higher education in this state with a regionally accredited program for the education of professional educators to provide alternative certification programs for teachers. This year, for the first time in its history, the state Senate is doing business on computers rather than paper. Senate clerks have been using computers for years, but the senators themselves always relied on printed copies of legislation. For some, it's a welcome change. For others, it's still a worry. Bob Brunner reports.
Every once in a while on the Senate floor, you will see some technicians gathered around a senator working on a problem. It's usually the new iPad each senator uses to read each bill, track the progress of committees, and consider amendments. Instead of a pile of hundreds of documents, each containing 10 to 100 pages, the desks contain only the small computer. For veteran senators like Donna Boley, it's been a tough transition.
It's been hard to begin with because we did it, just cold turkey. We had the bill book where you could always thumb and get your bills last year and the last 20-some years I've been here. And now you have just a computer, the iPad. So you really have to get some training on the iPad. And the staff has been very helpful. As you've probably witnessed, they've been around showing me how to use it. And it's getting easier. But when the bills come up, you need to get to those bills right away. And sometimes it's hard. You'll hit the wrong thing and your screen goes blank. So I'm getting it.
Ohio County Senator Orphy Klempa has an installation on his desk for his iPad, and other senators say he was the quickest to adapt. Klempa likes the new technology.
I like it because I don't have to shuffle through a whole bunch of papers here on my desk, and it's all right here on the screen. And I've really been blessed with not having a fear of technology. I mean, I'll just jump into something. And I was taught a long time ago when all this modern technology came on that don't be afraid to do anything on it. We got people educated on how to fix it. So I'll just go on there and I'll do whatever I have to do. And if something happens, I know we got somebody around here who can correct it. And I just don't have a fear of it. And it makes it easy to work with it.
The computer guru on the Senate floor is Richie Novak. He's often called to help when senators have problems, but he says the transition has been very smooth.
Most of it is just learning how to use the device. It's still new technology, and they're just getting used to it, and just normally just implementing new technology. I mean, you have a learning curve that you have to deal with.
This seems to have been pretty smooth.
It has been going better than what I expected it to, but it's been nice.
Down in the journal room, it's a huge difference. Instead of piles and piles of bills in every corner and overflowing more than 100 boxes, it looks neat and mostly empty. Bobby Legg has been operating here for 20 years.
That's because now we're on bills on demand. Used to be we had 200 bills every day for each slot, each number. Now we're down to 2 or 3 bills a day, and we do it on demand. If someone comes in and they want 40 bills, we run them. That way, at the end of the session, we don't have all these bills to put in recycle, because we always recycled.
And the fact that they're carrying all these things around on these old computer pads, does that help?
It certainly does. Just for instance, we used to rent boxes here with every bill of the session went in these boxes. We've went from 100 and some boxes to about 27.
In past years, by this time of the session, the senators would have a stack of paper generally about this high of all the bills that have been introduced. Now they have what they call an iPad, and everything's in there. Some of the senators say it's been an easy transition. Some of the senators say they're still getting used to it.
Still in question is how the system will operate on the frantic final nights when conference committees amend bills in hallways and amendments are scrawled on legal pads. For West Virginia Public Broadcasting, I'm Bob Brunner in Charleston.
And this has been the Legislature Today. I'm Beth Voorhees. Thanks for joining us. Good night.